To adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passed. Thank you. The second one, if I could have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 11th Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Passed. Okay, good. I think right now I'll turn it over. I'm sorry, Landon. So comments from the public. Are you tracking anything?
Oh, we have safety briefing from
I am not.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Safety Briefing.
Melissa, I apologize.
Thank you, General Salvo. In the event of an emergency, security will call 911, and we will exit this floor through the stairwell, which is located just outside of the elevator. If you have an emergency, please notify the security officer in the lobby of this floor. We'll assemble at the First Baptist Church parking lot located on the corner of Ashley and Main. And the hazards in the room would be the chairs. And thank you for silencing your devices.
Good, thank you, Melissa. Okay, and Landon, back to you again, if there's any comments from the public.
I currently do not see any comments from the public, but I will go ahead and announce how that process is handled. Once again, my name is Landon Todd, and for those that are new to the WebEx technology, I'm going to give a real brief overview of the controls for public comment. Now, if you're joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device, such as a smartphone, you'll see a series of buttons at the bottom. Now, the very first one that you'll notice is an icon of a microphone. It's red, it means you're muted and will be on mute for the majority of this meeting unless you are recognized to speak. Now, if you're recognized to speak to provide comment, you will click on that button and it will turn green. This will mean that you're unmuted and we can hear you. Now, I have also enabled the chat capability. If you touch your screen or scroll next to the participant icon, you'll notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up the chat window. So for now, if you would, go ahead and if you need to unmute your line to go ahead and provide comments, you may do so now or type them in the chat window. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Landon. I think our first thing, Julie, your leadoff batter for the FY23 budget.
All right. Good morning, committee members. Today I'll be walking through the proposed fiscal year 23 budget for your feedback and ultimately your recommendation to the board for approval. We strive to budget through the lens of JEA's core values, utilizing the strategic focus areas to inform prioritization through the process. The proposed operating budget reflects prudent spending with strategy in mind. The capital plan contains projects that will support and grow the systems, always striving for effective completion. Fuel and purchase power expenses continue to rise, which is then passed on to customers. There is also a $124 million planned contribution to the Rate Stabilization Fund in preparation for Plant Vogel coming online. This budget is intended to be supported by a mid-year base rate increase on the electric side, stable water rates, and a chilled water rate restructuring that will lay the foundation for future growth. JEA pays an annual contribution to the City of Jacksonville and is also the vehicle for a franchise fee, public service tax, gross receipts tax, and sales tax. JEA plans to deliver over $264 million to the City of Jacksonville and over $69 million to the state of Florida in fiscal year 23. Total JEA labor costs for fiscal year 23 are reflected in the chart. Base payroll expenses are budgeted at a 4.6% increase over the fiscal year 22 budget. This is driven by step increases, assumed general salary increases, and an addition of 111 full-time employees to support the growing needs of the business. All right, moving into the electric system. The fiscal year 23 revenues assume sales of 12,200 megawatt hours, which is essentially flat to our fiscal year 22 forecast. Staff is recommending a mid-year base rate increase of approximately 0.75%, of base revenues. Previously, we presented a plan with a 1.5% base rate increase for fiscal year 23. However, we are now proposing to delay the change as we work through rate recommendations resulting from the cost of service study. At a future meeting, we will bring a robust plan that includes not only the change to pricing, but recommendations on programs and structure. The increase in fuel revenues reflected in the green bar mirror the current fuel expense forecast. This all results in a $1.5 billion budget for fiscal year 23. Forecasted base revenue needs are driven mainly by integrating the Vogtle PPA contract into the cost structure, projected to come online in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23. Additional revenue is also needed in order to maintain strong coverage metrics, liquidity above minimum level prescribed in our pricing policy, and an increasing level of operating expenses.
Now, Jay said he was going to work on the vocal thought process. Is that, I mean, when do you think you'll have a sense of where you're coming from there?
So right now, we just, for the Vogtle expenses, we just have the latest expense forecast we have in there with our most conservative timeline. It's a very conservative timeline, which is later. So if it ends up being more positive than what we're anticipating, then I would assume all of those numbers would
Move forward.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So can we ask questions, or do you want to wait?
Please do.
So I think one of the things in context with Vogtle that I was looking for is an overview of all of our expenses, because we were looking that potentially it's going to cost us more with Vogtle, but there might be some expense saves embedded into our organization. Have we done anything to see where we can eliminate expenses elsewhere?
So, you want to answer it?
Well,
So-
I'll let you go first.
So throw something over here if I say something wrong.
Okay.
So with the plan pushed out for Vogtle coming in later in 23, we don't see those fuel savings yet. So they will be in later years, but not in FY23.
And I'm not referring to fuel, I'm talking about base rate expenses. Or have we launched any kind of cost save initiatives looking for us to save money in the expenses that are contributing into the base rate? No, that's okay. Was curious.
I don't think any official. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Marty, I'm here. I think that it's not we have not launched an official, here is a project that we're going to move forward with to cut the rates. What we have done is ask the businesses, the business to look at their rates and look at their needs on the O&M side. We have traditionally underspent our O&M, and it's part of what we're working towards. And part of the reason we're delaying the rate increase is so that we can be sure that between now and the fall that we can get the full and complete picture of what those need to be, because we're going to come under our budget on O&M. So we're saving money to budget every year. Now what we need to do is get really good at the planning side of it so that we know how accurate these are out in the 26, 27 timeline. So that's the same question you asked last year. I do think it is that we've made some progress on that, but not a specific task that says, this is where we want you to cut. When we go through the budget, we look at it very closely, and Julie's team is going through very closely to look at to get to the right rate levels.
All right, thank you. I'll ask it.
Apparently I'm yelling. Apparently I'm coming through loud.
No, that's okay. That's all right. And then one other question embedded into the base rate is really just our labor costs. I think we budgeted 4.5% increase. Have we distilled that into salaries paid? And for our hourly associates, don't answer today, but I would love at some point to make sure that we're paying our hourly associates the appropriate wage.
Understand.
And we are in the middle of bargaining unit negotiations right now.
the negotiations are.
Understood, but that, not everybody falls in that world. Thank you.
And then, so Marty, and if I'm off base on this one, Ted, tell me, but I know for tomorrow for Vogel, the overview is going to include that potential tender, which I know there's a lot of stars that have to align, but that's sort of one of the financial potential savings a little bit, possibly, and I think we go into detail on that tomorrow.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
Jay, you sound loud and healthy, which is good.
Yeah, I haven't talked to anyone in 4 days, so it's new for me.
Probably is good for your health. Okay, Julie, go ahead, please.
All right, thank you. All right, this slide breaks down the $1.5 billion budget into its operating components. Fiscal year 23, you can see they're highlighted. It assumes a $672 million fuel and purchase power expense, $295 million in operations and maintenance, $245 million for non-fuel purchase power, which includes the contribution to the stabilization fund for future Vogel expenses, $127 million in current year capital funds to support the CIP, $77 million in scheduled debt service, and $95 million in city contribution from the electric system. This is a $226 million increase from the fiscal year 22 budget, mainly driven by the increase in fuel and purchase power, which is that bottom bar. And this is an illustration that breaks down the electric components just into $1, and fuel and purchase power is overwhelmingly the largest.
I love this slide. Great slide. And going back to this slide, I mean, had we presented this slide 15 years ago with the debt that we were carrying, that debt service would have taken a lot more of that dollar. So again, great strategy to aggressively pay off debt in a rising rate environment.
Yeah.
Remember, our CapEx for the next 5 or 6 years is going up, so we will be borrowing money.
We will, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's
we're
a
in
lot
good,
easier to
we're in
borrow
good,
money when you've got capacity to borrow
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
and you're not leveraged.
yeah.
As this year has proven extreme in regards to the fuel markets, we wanted to show the history of the fuel expense budget and actual spend in comparison to what we are anticipating to see in fiscal year 22 and 23. You can see the projections are noticeably higher than what we have experienced the past 3 years. The change in our fuel charge methodology enables us to react more quickly to swings, which allows consistent recovery. The expense is passed directly through to customers, so staff is working diligently to mitigate the variability and high expenses through planning and hedging activities. And the percent hedged you can see in the hash marks in the bar. The O&M budget of $295 million is a $28.7 million increase from the fiscal year 22 budget. And this is driven mainly by the items listed there on the left, like labor expenses for additional headcount, a large environmental remediation project, the new headquarters lease, a new program to cover credit card convenience fees, and some outage work. I'll bring your attention to the supplies and materials line. It looks essentially flat, which seems counterintuitive given the current state of material price increases. However, there were some items that were included in the fiscal year 22 budget that are not in the 23 proposed budget. That makes it look flat. Things like COVID supplies that we're no longer budgeting for. And in 22, we had major overhaul work during one of our outages that is not necessary in 23.
And just the Kennedy remediation project, I mean, that's a $14 million project. It's a one-time project. We have money, special money set aside for that. So that kind of looks more like a capital expense, but the county will say we do it as an operating expense. So, you know, we won't have that again in
Explain that to
24.
me.
So there's some remediation.
Yeah,
that needs-
yeah.
So it looks more like a capital
Yeah,
expense.
yeah.
It's a one-time kind of thing, and then you're done. But the way that the county rules are set up, those types of projects are supposed to be accounted for as O&M projects instead of capital
Okay.
projects because they don't. It's not improving the asset; it's cleaning up something.
Okay.
All right, the non-fuel purchase power line item in the budget consists of expenses driven by capacity that are not solely owned by JEA, and they exclude fuel. So while SJRPP has been shut down since 2018, there are still bonds outstanding that we pay debt service on. And we also pay on outstanding bonds for Plant Shearer, along with some shared legacy expenses. And this is also the category that contains Plant Vogel expenses, including an assumed online date for Unit 3 in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23. And looking at that rate stabilization line, we plan to contribute $124 million to be utilized in the future for anticipated Vogel expenses, which is shown in more detail in the following chart. So this illustrates a long-term projection on the use of the non-fuel purchase power rate stabilization fund. You can see the combined planned contributions of $115 million this year and $124 million next year will allow the fund to be strategically drawn down to offset the large increase in annual expenses, which is up there on the green line. This strategy is to alleviate rate increase pressure as the plants come online. And those blue bars represent the ending balance in the fund, so you can see how we're planning to draw it down through the years. The proposed budget results in positive metrics for fiscal year 23 and sustains positive metrics through 26 with a look towards a debt to asset in the mid 40% range, high coverage and liquidity ratios, all supporting operations and a $1.3 billion capital plan. All right, moving to capital. The electric system capital budget is set at $275 million, which is a $31 million increase from the 22 budget, with the bulk of the plan for transmission and distribution projects. And the plan is to fund the plan entirely with current year funds and withdrawals from the capital fund, resulting with an ending capital fund balance of $67 million. So no new debt on the electric system for capital for 23.
So the capital budget, how is inflation, and how are you adjusting for inflation on these projects?
Really on a project by project basis, as the folks in operations, are working on those forecasts. That's a struggle that they're having, but that they're looking at the bids that are coming in on current projects and making adjustments to those bids as they go, and are doing the best they can in forecasting what it's going to cost. And
Are we delaying projects?
Not that I know of, that we haven't delayed any projects, but some of them may get delayed just because of the supply chain issues and things like that. And so we kind of have two things working: increase prices, and then delay in getting things. So right now we're thinking that they'll probably balance each other out a bit. We may have missed the pricing on some of these projects, but then the actual getting everything that we want to get done may not happen. Of course, we will still have to do those projects, and the cost will follow along with them. But as far as just focusing on a single year budget, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape.
And getting like transformers, is there any improvement on that backlog?
No, sir. In fact, it's getting worse.
Is it?
We're seeing 30% increases easily year over year, easily.
Yeah, I think that it's we have not had a specific problem on a whole yet, but we're starting to see more of them. There's a couple of examples on the water side where we've got some pumps that have been delayed. That they've always been very, very long lead time items, and now they're even further out. And a couple of projects where we've got transformers that are delayed. So I suspect that we will see delays and increases, but like Ted said, it'll be on a project by project, more of a project by project basis on how that impacts us. So we've got to keep our eye on that and the team is looking at how to be sure that we have the transformers and the equipment and all the different things that we need, all the supplies that we need. But there's going to be pressure a little bit on cost. It will be more expensive, but right now the delays are going to be the things that really impact us more, are going to be more impactful.
Moving on to water. The fiscal 23 revenues assume sales of 74,557 million gallons, which is a 2% increase from the 22 forecast. It includes stable rates and the final phases of the plant capacity fee increases, which are reflected in the green bar. And this results in a $604 million budget. The current forecast for future years includes slight annual increases to the sales forecast and stable rates through 26. This slide, like the electric one, breaks down the $604 million budget into its operating components. Fiscal year 23 assumes $205 million in operations and maintenance, $261 million in current year capital funds to support the CIP, $103 million in scheduled debt service, and $27 million in city contribution from the water system. This is a $62 million increase from the fiscal year 22 budget, mainly driven by the increase in the current year capital funds and increased debt service.
I tell you, it's amazing. If you look at the capital and the water and electric, this asset or JEA really provides our community. I mean, it provides a lot of jobs because we'll be spending this type of money for the next 7 or 8 years. It's impressive, yeah.
And just like the electric slide, this represents every dollar in the water system budget, and the majority is going to capital projects. All right, the O&M budget of $205 million is a $12.4 million increase from the fiscal year 22 budget. And this is driven mainly by the items listed on the left, like labor expenses for additional headcount, the lease for the new headquarters, and a plan to cover credit card fees. And there is also an increase to the cost of chemicals and gases. And the water system financial metrics are forecasted to land all within pricing policy targets and support a $2.3 billion capital plan through 26. All right, and moving into the capital slide, the water system capital budget is set at $400 million, which is a $38 million increase from the fiscal year 22 budget, with the bulk of the CIP going towards wastewater projects. The plan is to fund entirely with current year funds and withdrawals from the capital fund, resulting with an ending capital fund balance of $23 million. So you can see this year, next year might be the last years we utilize current year funds, and then we'll start to issue new debt. All right, moving on to district energy. The fiscal year 23 revenues assume essentially flat sales and a rate restructuring that results in a $12.85 million budget. That is quite the increase in the bars. We will discuss the rate plan later on in the agenda and get into more detail. And this slide breaks down that $12.85 million budget into its operating components within the budget. Fiscal year 23 assumes a $6 million in operations and maintenance, $3 million in current year capital funds to support the CIP, and $3 million in debt service.
So even though the bars look the same as they have on the other two groups, much smaller numbers. Much smaller numbers. That needs to be pointed out.
Thank you. All right, the O&M budget of $6.5 million is a $1.3 million increase from the 22 budget, but this is driven mainly by the increase in utility costs at the plant. So just like fuel costs have impacted our customers, they impact our chilled water plants as well. And so that's why you're seeing that increase in expenses. All right, moving on to capital. The DES system capital budget is set at $6.9 million, which is a $1.3 million increase from 22, with the bulk of the CIP going to the Hogan's Creek line extension. The plan is to fund partially with current year funds and then the balance with the revolving credit facility.
Hey,
And then here's-
Julie, real quick, before you go to this one on the district energy, while it's small numbers, I think it's important that we remember that what we're trying to do with this. There's not a lot of customers that are on this right now, but we do have interest from a lot of down. It says on the bottom of this that the Jaguar's performance facility is going to be a new customer. All of the activities that are going on and all the construction that's proposed down at that end provide us an opportunity to have more customers. And we've got a team of people looking at how we can use this system to serve right now primarily in the downtown area, but the model that we have for this district energy can become the model that we have for distributed energy for other sources. And so this is it's a more important than the numbers would indicate. It's something that I don't think we've done for 20 years. We haven't really worked on expanding the system, and I think it's a service that we can provide our customers is going to be very positive. So I'm excited about where this goes over the next 2 or 3 years, even though the numbers are small. Thank you, Julie. Sorry to interrupt.
But Julie, why would you pay with this with a revolver? What's the thought there?
Just to bridge. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
No, you got it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to bridge the need, we have utilized all of our cash balances and we are not bringing in enough current year revenues to pay for the capital plan, which is why we'll talk about a rate restructuring to kind of get us back on level ground so that we are being responsible with how we fund that capital.
Okay.
I can add to that, to the chair, to Bobby. We just put a borrowing notice to borrow an additional $2 million, so we had $3 million outstanding. The current series is callable in April of next year, so we'll have the opportunity to both refund that series and add new money.
Okay.
So it's within 12 months. We think we can get at that debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, and here is a look at all of our systems combined, a consolidated systems operating budget. We are proposing for fiscal year 23 our total operating budget at $2.1 billion. All right, our fiscal year 23 budget proposal addresses business needs and additional resources. The proposed rate adjustments are included to support the continued cost of doing business while lessening larger increases in the future. Fuel and purchase power costs will be continually monitored to mitigate increases in volatility. And we will discuss the DES restructuring that we mentioned in a few minutes, and it will prepare it to be a viable asset into the future. And with that, we are recommending the committee take the proposed budget to the board for approval, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Do you want a motion to take it to the full board, or do you need to know?
What do I want, Regina?
Yeah, I think we need to, if I'm understanding right, we need to do a motion here and then bring it to the board tomorrow.
There will be a motion for recommendation of approval.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passed. Great. Thank you, Julie. We'll take this to the board for board approval tomorrow.
Good job, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of work.
Thank you.
Julie, I'm sorry. One more thing before you get to the next thing. We're on the WebEx, and Mark Zimmerman's asked a couple of questions. If you can call him afterwards and just be able to respond to his question, I think that'll be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Well, it gets easier every year to do a budget. That number last year was our first one. Second goes a lot easier. I want to encourage everybody, if we need to make adjustments, we need to go to city council and make those adjustments, that we do that. This is a moving target, especially with the economic conditions that are out there.
Thank you.
And Ted, just so when we talked Friday, so this keeps us on a glide path to get to city council by 1 July for the budget submission, right?
Exactly. Yes,
Got
sir.
it. Okay. So yeah, good point.
This also, not only does it keep us on that glide path, it also gives us an opportunity to do exactly what you just asked, Marty, is that we'll still review this and be sure that we have it at the right place, the right levels, that we time the next set of discussions going to be about electric cost of service that has an impact on this. By moving that out to April, it gives us more flexibility. And we went over it pretty quickly, but it's been a long time since we have budgeted to add 100 new positions into the board. And so I'm excited about the way that this is coming together, and the team that put this together. And it's impactful for us to be sure that we have the right people in the right place to be able to accomplish this. So thank you for those comments.
Good. Okay, thank you, Julie. Okay.
I think it's still me.
Okay.
You're
This is for the, yeah,
you're
this is
still
good,
there.
okay.
Don't get out of the hot seat yet.
Not yet. All right, today I'm providing a quick update on the electric system cost of service study. We last provided a progress update at the February Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and since then have received a draft final report and rate recommendations from our consultant. Some items in the report address fixed cost recovery, legacy riders, time-based rates, standby pricing, and other new concepts in rate design. We have updated the timeline for final recommended action from this fiscal year to mid-year fiscal year 23. As we work through these items, we are continuing to address customer impact and communication. Our plan is to first bring updates to our pricing policy that will then support our final rate recommendations in the fall, to then potentially be effective in April. Any questions on the electric update?
We felt it was prudent to do it right, not quick.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agree.
Oh, man.
Okay.
All right, and along with the update on the electric rates, we are also providing a chilled water cost of service update. We did provide a chilled water cost of service update at the February F&A meeting, and now we will share the results and our recommendations. JEA currently serves approximately 10 customers from 3 plants, Hogan's Creek, Springfield, and the downtown plant. And as you can see from the table, most of these customers have had JEA chilled water for almost 20 years.
And Hogan's Creek, both of those contracts are expiring. When will we expect to renew and push those?
So we've been speaking to all of our existing customers, especially in regards to changing the rates, giving them an update. And part of our recommendations as well are to update our contracts and to streamline them. So we've already started talking to customers about getting that.
Because we're investing in Hogan's Creek, so it would make sense for us to get on that one really quickly, those
Yes,
two.
we are currently in conversations.
There've been conversations about Brooklyn. I mean, it seems that the growth in Brooklyn is just outrageous.
Not that I know of,
Yeah.
but we're trying to grow the system, so
Yeah.
I think we'll be talking about it.
Yeah.
So we need to get the financial foundation in place,
Yeah.
and move forward with the growth after that.
Yeah.
We have a team and a new business group that is looking at areas to be able to expand appropriately. I'm going to try to say this. I hope it makes sense. What we're really trying to do is to get to a place where 10 years from now, we don't look back and say, Brooklyn looks like it would have been a good place. We're 10 years late on a Brooklyn for the large part. So how we're trying to respond now is to be able to serve areas like that. It would have been, could have been. It's hard for me to say it exactly like that, but there certainly are areas that we could have done some things. 10 years ago, everything looked a little bit different, so that's a little bit aggressive for me to say that. What we can do is control going forward, and so serving some of the new areas in Brooklyn, some of the new areas downtown, and then using this as the tool to serve other areas that we haven't considered before are there. But Ted's right, we've got to get the financial system in order. This is going to look like a big increase because for 20 years we haven't had an increase, but we've already talked to all the customers that are impacted.
And we talked I don't know if it was a board meeting or a finance committee meeting, about really reviewing the cost for someone to tap into our system or create their own system. And heretofore, we've been cost prohibitive. It's easier for someone to put their own chilled water system in, and which was my experience, I'm sorry, at the DuPont Center at the JEA. So I think somebody was working on that to make sure that it makes sense to tap into our system.
That's right. And so the way we're going to structure the connection fees, I think, makes a difference. And going forward, to arm people with that information, I believe one of the groups is working on a calculator, so it's easy.
Great.
One versus the other, and you can plug in your specifics and see what the result is.
Great. Thank you.
I think we've discussed this before at the F&A meeting, but just as a reminder, we have not adjusted the way we charge our customers for chilled water since the inception of the business in the early 2000s. As we have had revenue shortfalls and now have utilized cash balances, we are in need of a rate restructuring for our current customers, as well as a better handle on how to price for our new customers. JEA and Jacobs Engineering collaborated to develop a holistic financial plan for the district energy system. The financial plan includes an analysis performed on the current rate structure and cost recovery needs. As you can see in the chart on the right, the current rate structure is insufficient for the system's annual cost recovery needs and does not cover expenditures for growth or system revitalization. Jacobs' recommendations include establishing clear connection fees and contract terms, establishing demand rates based on plant location, variable rates that better reflect the operating costs of the business, penalties that encourage efficient use of the system, and a growth strategy for new customers. And we'll get into each of these in the following slides. So first, connection fees. The cost to connect customers to the chilled water system varies based on customer load and distance from the plant. JEA funds the plants and the piping that is hydraulically connected to the chilled water system, and that's identified in the blue line. And these are pipes that currently exist. The cost to get chilled water to a new connection will be customer funded, but it will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis to identify potential additional connections, and we will then allocate cost recovery accordingly. And this is represented by the green line. And then the connection cost past the customer property line is funded and furnished by the customer. In addition to the cost to connect a customer, we must collect the cost to operate and maintain the system to deliver chilled water. The legacy rate structure attempted to accomplish this excuse me, by the rates reflected on the table. And as you saw a couple slides previously, the structure is not accomplishing that objective. So the recommended rate design includes demand rates to cover capital renewal, replacement, and plant expansion costs. It's differentiated by plant, and 2 variable rates. The commodity rate will pass through the utility costs and will be adjusted monthly, and the consumption rate will pass through the operating costs and will be adjusted annually. And this just gives us a better handle on collecting our costs as they're incurred. And then the Delta T penalties, those are a surcharge added to the customer's bill when the actual return water temperature is below what is stipulated in their contract. A poor Delta T does not mean the customer is using more chilled water, it just means they're using it inefficiently. Our current contracts do reserve the right to penalize a customer for poor delta T, but they don't dictate when or exactly how JEA would levy the penalty. The penalty should allow JEA to recover the potential costs associated with the correction and remediation of the delta T issues. A target delta T going forward will be decided during contract negotiations, and they may vary between new and old customers due to equipment limitations of existing customers. So this is more to just encourage behavior of efficient use of the system, much like a KVAR charge would be used on the electric side. The final recommendation is to establish performance metrics to measure the effectiveness of the district energy system, mainly centered around growth. Revising the rate structure now provides a strong foundation to enable us to offer chilled water to other potential customers in Jacksonville, and many of which have already contacted JEA to request information, which Jay mentioned previously.
But you have this fixed asset, and just, I mean, the more you put people on,
Yes.
it's just revenue goes straight to the bottom line.
That's right, and it's better for everybody if we
Yeah,
can
so I mean,
do
talking
that
about your
efficiently.
costs,
Mm-hmm.
revenue does help this cost.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We envisioned way more users when we put this
Yeah, but
system
we
in
didn't-
place 20 years ago.
No, but we didn't think about, revenue does make a difference.
Well, huge difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
When was the last time a new building was added to it?
Look at the dates of the contract.
Yeah, I know.
I think maybe the courthouse. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Our new building is going to be the newest one, so we were able to convince ourselves to be a customer.
But the Jaguars I think Jay has seen this as an
The
opportunity.
Performance Center, and then obviously the rest is going up down there
Yeah.
in the Med Park.
But it's there.
We haven't made
So
it.
we've got a team that has been in touch with. There's a large number of people that are really interested, and we were trying to decide how best to show that. And it gets a little complicated because we don't know yet whether that they are if they're real prospects or if they're not. They're all real prospects if we can meet their timelines and if we can do what we need to do. But we've got folks that are working on this, and if it works well, then we will see more customers in the next few years coming onto this, and it will help. And the other thing that this helps, it supports the economic development primarily in downtown right now, but it supports the community, and it helps spread out other costs. Even if incrementally small, it will grow and help us on the long run. So it's a good thing for all the way around.
But you could do this elsewhere in this community, right, Jay? I mean, this is a product that
We
can.
can. It tends to work in central business district type activities, but it is a model that we can also use for other types of distributed energy, whether that's generators or solar or something else. We've been meeting to discuss what the best plan is moving forward. That's that communications marketing plan, and how we. And then the other thing we've got to do as a team is get faster at being able to respond. So whenever we've been working with Ray's team, and Laura Dutton's team and Ray's team have been working together to be sure that we can get our answers as quickly as we can, and that we can respond to customers very quickly to get the answers on whether they can. Because Marty, your point, the calculator is only as good if the calculator says that it makes sense, and then it's going to take us 6 months. Most people are moving way faster than that, and we've got to be able to move that fast. That's our challenge now.
So just looking at the Hogan Creek area with the Performance Center and possibly the other development down there, we have that much excess capacity in that plant, or do we have to upgrade the plant?
I believe we're going to have to spend some capital there to expand the capacity. Mhm.
But
There
it's
isn't that
minimal
much.
comparing the
If we
opportunity.
do it well, we'll have to expand the plant. That's the.
That's
It's
a
That's a
good
good part of
It'll be
that.
a positive thing.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was just curious.
But we'll be recapturing the cost that we need to fund that. So
We're gonna probably.
it'll work.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah. All right.
All right. And we'll just end on the timeline. Staff is planning to request the board to call a rate hearing in August to then hold the rate hearing for the new chilled water rates in September. And just like Jay mentioned, all of our current customers have been contacted by their account executive. They've been made aware of the new proposed rates, the financial impact, and the proposed timeline. And they've been offered personal meetings one-on-one. And with that, my presentation is concluded, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Any initial feedback from the customers, any pushback, or it's too early to tell?
I haven't heard of any pushback per se. I think they just want to know what to expect so they can get it in their budget for the next year.
Great job, Julian.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to. So Julie's had 2 cost of service studies and a budget all at the same time. Bad planning on our part. I promised her that we will do better in the future, but to Joe and Julie and all of Julie's team, thank you very much for all the hard work. They deserve it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, this cost of service study is long
Oh,
overdue.
my
So
goodness, look at
thank you for
Yeah.
making it
So,
happen.
so we're gonna do better, and we're not gonna have 2 cost of service studies in the same timeline going forward. But
Luckily,
we
what-
needed to get caught up, right?
Right,
So once you get caught up, then it's a little bit easier to stay caught up.
And
So,
luckily, one of the systems was small compared to the other one.
yes.
We also, the change to move to the mid-year rate adjustments will help us on timing. It'll help us with communications. It'll keep us from getting budgets and rates and cost of services all mixed up. And on the back end of that, it also helps spread the load for the rates and budget analysis team. That they do a great job, but we did pile about a year's worth of work on them in the last 6 weeks or so. So thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jake. Joe?
Good morning, General DeSalvo and committee members. I have 3 action items for this committee and for the board. The first is the modifications to JEA's disclosure policy and procedures. The disclosure policies and procedures were originally approved by the JEA board in May of 2015. Our disclosure counsel, Greenberg Traurig, has proposed changes consistent with current best practices to separate the board's strategic disclosure responsibilities from the execution and administration of the disclosure policies by the JEA leadership team and staff. While the board retains responsibility for the policies and procedures, the revisions provide flexibility for the CFO to make modifications to the policies without having to seek board approval. The more detailed staff procedures will be contained in an internal control document that we are currently drafting. Both clean and redline versions of the revised disclosure policies and procedures are included in the committee package. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions, Joe?
Do you need a motion
I think, yeah, it seems pretty straightforward. If I
or
could have-
move it?
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
Next item is the approval of the electric system and water and sewer system annual disclosure reports. I'm sorry, I said sewer. That is technically the name of the bond resolutions. We're rebranding to water system annual disclosure reports. I provided an overview of the annual disclosure report process at the February board meeting. Draft annual disclosure reports were provided to the board members on February 23rd. We have included redline drafts of the ADRs in the board package to address minor updates. Further, we will be updating our MEAG Power PPA disclosure to include financial updates that were filed with the MSRB by MEAG late last week in its 2021 annual information statement. The main update involves the Project J total cost, which has risen to approximately $3.4 billion for Project J. And that's a $154 million increase relative to what we disclosed in our 2021 annual report. Jay will address this in greater detail tomorrow, but MEAG has begun to reduce the total project cost for Project J by costs that the co-owners believe are the responsibility of Georgia Power. So that dispute amongst the co-owners is ongoing, and the dispute involves both the amount at which the tender option is introduced and the timing for a 120-day period for the co-owners to elect to tender or not. And we'll have more information on that tomorrow.
Okay.
But the ADRs will, the electric system ADR will be updated to reflect that language.
Right.
MEAG's done a fine job. We've just basically taken the information that they've disclosed and including it in our annual disclosure report. So this is a motion, this is an action item as well.
Okay, good. Any questions at all on this? Good. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Okay, good. Pass. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. So my final item is an increase in JEA's trade guarantee to the Energy Authority. The 7 TEA member utilities provide trade support to TEA through guarantees. The guarantees support TEA's transactional, advisory, and investment activities. Notably, the guarantees have allowed TEA to provide transaction support to over 300 counterparties, making TEA the largest community-owned trading entity in the U.S. Advisory services are provided to clients leveraging TEA's significant depth and breadth of experience. TEA's president and CEO, Joni Teofilo, will provide further background information at tomorrow morning's board meeting. Member guarantees are foundational to TEA's business. The current guarantee level of $164 million has been in place for 15 years. JEA's share of the current guarantee is approximately $29 million. The need for the increase in the guarantees has increased over time due to fundamental market changes to include increased volatility that we see today, less fuel diversity, and increased member hedging activities. As I mentioned, we are requesting the overall guarantee level of $164 million to be increased to $340 million with a phase-in of JEA's guarantee limits to $45 million on or before June 1st and to $60 million on or before December 1st. The increased level is intended to be sufficient for at least the next 5 years. And I'd like to thank Regina for her support with getting the documentation finalized for this package. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
What are we guaranteeing?
T transacts with many clients throughout the nation, and those transactions often provide a requirement for guarantees, and they can only provide a certain amount of guarantees as TEA. So they're relying, the counterparties, banks, trading counterparties like Shell, for instance, on the gas side, will require credit support for longer dated transactions. So we're stepping up to, in essence, to backstop those trading activities. In the event T did not perform under one of these obligations, the counterparties could call on the guarantees. They have never failed to pay under a hedging agreement or any other transaction. So they may be hedges, they could be long-term purchases of natural gas or coal. It's just a myriad of different transactions that we're guaranteeing.
But they have to exhaust all possible solutions before they tap our guarantee.
That's correct.
Which is important.
That's correct.
And for the record, I did not review all of the legal documents that are in here. I want to make sure you're not expecting us to have looked at and reviewed all those. We've got lots of attorneys doing that for us, right?
Took care of that.
Through the chair. That's right.
I just want to make sure.
We have reviewed the document. The guarantee itself has not changed materially, but there is a mechanism now for repayment of any draws under the guarantee. That didn't exist before. So I'd say that the documents are actually enhanced relative to what we had before.
It seems, I don't know, I keep seeing every 15 years for updated stuff. Coincidental or, yeah, it's a dumb question, but I'm not.
I was sick of the same thing when Julie said 15 years, because I was going to say 15 years.
So this one, T came to us, right? So District Energy, maybe, I wasn't here, it's not fair of me to say, but maybe we could have been doing some things earlier with that we didn't, right? But this is really T coming to us.
TEA coming to us.
Yeah, coming to us and saying, hey, we need to change these numbers. The market's a lot more volatile than it used to be. I mean, you saw Julie's purchase of fuel, how that has sloped up, and so that's part of the reason that's driving this. I mean, if we still were in a $3 gas, they might have not even asked for this, but we're not.
So it's really the combination of their transaction volume has really skyrocketed over time. They peaked a couple of years ago at 362 million. So this is lockstep with the transaction volume that they're seeing. And as Ted pointed out, the gas prices and the impact on fuel costs, as well as extreme weather events. If you think about Uri, Winter Storm Uri in the Texas and in the Midwest, it's really impacted trading activities nationwide.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think we need to action this, right, for the board?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could I have any questions before?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
I'll tell you
opposed?
two things.
Please.
We're lucky to have TEA. I mean, without it, we'd be lucky to have it in Jacksonville. I mean, just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We fought to have it in Jacksonville. Weren't they going to Atlanta?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yeah. I was chairman when we moved it here, and everybody said we were crazy, but it's been a great asset.
Agreed.
Yeah. But it's what it's done, and they have a national footprint right now.
Yeah.
That's growing. So it's an asset that we're just lucky to have.
Are we guaranteeing things that don't have anything to do with our business?
I would say,
You mean outside of this transaction, other guarantees or guarantees within this?
This one.
In this, I'm just confused a little bit. We talk about having a national footprint, and there are several utilities in this with us.
Right.
But are we enabling them to be bigger,
The answer is yes.
and
Yes,
does
sir.
that benefit us in any way?
Absolutely.
yeah,
Wow.
we get, go ahead.
We've seen increased revenue from T as a result of the trading activity. And so we're benefiting, and we're a co-owner as well. So T does not have the financial capacity to take on the kind of volume that's their transaction. So they are relying on these member guarantees as a basis for
We're making money every year on this.
Absolutely.
Not forget about the ability for us to have the backup opportunities. Because you look at the utility demand in this country is growing, and this moves demand to us when we need it, but we also make, how much money do we make every year out of this?
Last year we made $10 million. I mean, it was over $10 million.
It was in excess of $10
So
million.
last year was not a typical year, but it's seven digit. I mean, it's over $1 million a year.
I wish we'd had the opportunity to have the meeting we're going to have tomorrow, the presentation we're going to have tomorrow, before there was an action item on this. I think it would have helped
I agree.
talk through some of
Yeah,
the
but
things.
we could pass it here, and if there's any concerns, we can.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think the presentation tomorrow.
Okay.
Right, Jay? Oh, he's off. Okay.
we lost Jay.
I'll
But yeah.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
It's already motion.
Sorry.
Oh,
You've called it for vote.
Sorry.
We'll start discussion again.
We can discuss it again tomorrow.
I agree,
How's
we
that?
will.
It's an action item tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
We
Thank
did
you.
that 15 minutes, 15
And
keeps
happy
coming up.
birthday.
You've called the motion, but you haven't voted.
No, we did. Didn't we?
They voted. Oh, you had discussion after.
Yes.
I don't think the clerk heard the vote clearly.
Okay.
Okay.
Vote again?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Good, thank you. And happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Number 30, that's cool, Joe.
Tomorrow's
Yeah.
presentation. I wish I'd been.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, I think you're up next, right?
Confused at all where it started.
I'm Brandon Traub, Real Estate Coordinator, and Paul Mitchell, VP of Economic Development and Real Estate, should be jumping on in just a second. But good morning, Salvo and committee. Thank you.
Hey, Brandon.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, General DeSalvo and committee members. I'm Paul Mitchell, Vice President of Economic Development and Real Estate, and my pleasure to present to you today, actually not a pleasure, my duty to present to you today 2 items that we're going to request for approval for.
Come on, Paul.
Duty and pleasure.
Yeah.
We want
Well,
both.
given the subject matter, I didn't think it was appropriate, but it's great to talk to you. I'm sorry I'm not there today in person. I did have one of those texts that came in late last night saying, "Oh yeah, you were at an event where there was folks with COVID." So I'm just taking it cautious. I feel fine, but thank you for your time. Before I get started on this, I did want to take a couple minutes and talk about the real estate team itself. And we have 4 members currently on the real estate team, 2 coordinators. One is Eileen Conley. She's not here with us today. She is still with us. She's on vacation. And she's been with us for 17 years. We also have Brandon Traub, who you've heard from earlier. He's been with us for 8 years. He's also a real estate coordinator. Those 2 folks really handle the brunt of a lot of the day-to-day management of the real estate team. We also have Khaled Salah, who is our GIS guru and technician, and Dina Gee, who is our real estate coordinator, specialist. So they are a great team. They handle the brunt of the management of the day-to-day operations of our real estate portfolio. And I'm really pleased to announce, I can't announce the name just yet, but we will have a new real estate director coming on board in June, which we are all just thrilled about. The real estate team is responsible for the purchase and disposition of real estate for the electric, water, and wastewater systems, as well as JEA operations itself. The team also manages encroachment claims, performs real estate research and GIS mapping requests for internal and external customers, just to name a few of the responsibilities that the team handles. In this case, we're going to focus on the management of easements and eminent domain proceedings. While eminent domain is not the favorable method of managing real estate transaction challenges, it is an important mechanism for JEA to keep capital projects within their timelines, to clean up title issues at times, and also to further negotiations with unresponsive and unwilling owners. It's also important to note that JEA's real estate team has successfully managed thousands of real estate transactions and agreements without using eminent domain. In fact, the last time we brought it to the board was in 2018. And if you go back a whole decade, it was 3 times. And if you go back to 1993, it was another 12 times. So it's not a mechanism that we like to use, but it is an important part of our real estate process. Well, Florida statute and JEA's charter and real estate directive provide the authority for JEA to enact eminent domain. It is truly a measure of last resort. When we get to the point of processing an eminent domain request, it has been years in the making in most cases, and the team has exhausted our win-win approach to real estate negotiations and agreement. Prior to Brandon presenting the overviews for resolutions 2022-08 and 09, I just wanted to open the floor up to any questions.
This is really more of a statement about the way these packages come to us. I've made the statement before. It's hard for any of us to discern with LLCs listed as the property owners, discern if we have any conflicts with those owners, because we don't it's blind to us who the ultimate owner of the LLC is. I would like to bring that up in the governance committee and discuss there, but I have no way of knowing whether I'm doing business with the ultimate owner of these properties. As in a banker, I just want to make sure that y'all understand this has bothered me the last time I was on the board and continues to bother me today.
Understood. I think we can work within our legal process to address that issue and document as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But I think we got
Now,
to review.
We've got to,
Yeah,
I mean,
and you're working on it, but I think it's important to do a full review and clean some of this stuff up.
yeah, I think in the governance committee, we can address some of these concerns just to protect us, candidly, all of us, because it's hard to discern who owns these properties ultimately.
understood. Any other comments or questions before I hand it over to Brandon? Thank you for your time. Brandon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paul. We'd be happy to get you any ownership information whenever we can. Absolutely.
Well, we need to have a process.
We should
and
be a protocol though.
it needs to be a process that protects everybody. And so we'll do that in governance.
Absolutely. Again, thank you and good morning, General DeSalvo and committee members. JEA has two projects for which we are seeking approval for eminent domain at this time. The first project is called Southside Integrated Piping System, or as JEA likes to call it, SIPS. SIPS will provide better water quality, continued reliability, and economic growth to our South Grid water systems. It consists of a 30-inch raw water line, which will mostly be constructed in public right-of-ways and existing utility corridors. We're seeking eminent domain on 3 parcels for this project at this time to obtain water and sewer rights in the eastern 75 feet of the existing utility corridor. We've been negotiating on this project since May of 2020, and we're at this point to seek approval for eminent domain to alleviate any potential construction timeline issues because construction is supposed to begin in October of 2022. The next project is Circuit 663. Circuit 663 is a 69 kV electric transmission project to relieve a currently overloaded existing circuit and provide better reliability to our electric territory. The entire project is 6.3 miles of new electric transmission circuit. And in phase 1 of this project, there is one parcel for which we need to seek approval for eminent domain. We're requesting rights for overhead electric to serve through the adjacent to the right-of-way on this parcel. And construction for this project is supposed to start in July of 22. I'd love to take any questions or.
In both of these projects, are you taking the property, or you just taking an easement?
It's eminent domain for easement rights.
For easement rights.
Yes, we're not going to
That's
be
what I thought.
taking fee ownership at all.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, good. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
And Paul, thanks.
Thank you, General DeSalvo.
All right, good morning. Guess I'm next in the hot seat. Good morning, committee members. I'm Rob Zamataro, Director of Water System Planning and Development. And today I'd like to present an addition to our cost participation policy. So over the last several months, we've been listening to development community conversations started about 6-7 months ago. And that has resulted in this policy that's before you today. Some of the concerns or points about the existing policy is really the policy could only be utilized when JEA requested an upsizing of pipe. So it wasn't a set policy or set based on pipe size. It only applied to mains that were outside the development boundaries. And it was also a case-by-case situation. So it was dependent on the hydraulics of the system. Made it very difficult for developers to plan long-term if they had to have a design before they knew how much we were going to cost participate. So the proposed policy, it continues to support economic growth. It provides a clear-cut funding guidelines for developers, enabling them to plan. It is revenue neutral. It is funded by our current line extension fees that are in existence. And we remove the on-site, off-site restriction. So now it's just based on size of pipe. And it also works in conjunction with the existing policy. So this really isn't replacing ours, it's actually providing another tool in the toolbox for developers to utilize. So here's a quick outline of the policy. It's primarily just on transmission pipe. You can see the pipe sizes shown on the left-hand side. So it's pretty much for sewer force mains, it begins at 12 inch. For water and reuse, it begins 16 inches and up. You can see that we are basically contributing a fixed percentage. So if a developer has an idea of what they're going to build, they can calculate what our percentage is. So it makes it very easy for the developers to plan. Now, we did have to balance promoting economic growth and protecting ourselves financially, their existing customer base. So we did put a length limit. So there's a formula on the bottom. But what that basically does is limits the length we participate based on the size of the subdivision. So if you have a very small subdivision, you get a smaller contribution. Basically, the more homes or more development you bring, the larger the contribution. So it's fairly straightforward and clear cut. So, and that's it, short and sweet. We would like to ask for a motion to move this to the board for tomorrow.
But Jim, this is similar to the presentation I heard a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Nothing's changed from that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we reached out to NEFBA, we've reached out to several developers, and we've been working with them over the past 6 months or so to get feedback and to figure out what they needed and what we could afford to help. So it was really kind of a working together kind of thing too.
Yeah. You comfortable with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot better than the old policy because it was just too cumbersome, too difficult. Now it's, you know what it's going to be. And also the on-site, off-site was huge.
Yes.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Hey, General, I don't want to overhype this. I think you all know this, but this is a really big deal change in the way that we think and approach things. And I want to thank Rob and his team for the work that they did and everybody else. There's a lot of effort that came from a lot of areas in the organization, from the engineering and operations. This is a new and different way to think, and it is what we need to do more of. And I appreciate what they do.
You're good.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jay. Well said.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Ted, your whole group has done a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I didn't know Stephanie and Victor were back here because they were behind me, but they're part of Julie's team that has done great work on the budget and the cost service studies that we were talking about before. And I'd like just to say thank you to them publicly in front of everybody.
Thank you.
Well done, well done. Great work, folks.
And there's anybody else back there?
Oh, love it.
Okay, and I think, Regina, are you going to cover the 301 development?
Yes, I am.
Okay, if you could real quick, thank you.
Sure. As you're aware, First Coast Regional Utilities, which is wholly owned by 301 Capital Partners, filed an application to provide wastewater services in Duval, Nassau, and Baker counties. And as part of their application, it included a portion of JEA's exclusive service area. So we filed an objection. A few weeks ago, the Public Service Commission ultimately approved the application. We have still been in communication with 301 Partners to work out a settlement agreement post-decision. It is JEA's plan to appeal the PSC's decision because it has broader implications than just this one project, we believe. I have meetings scheduled with 301 Partners, 3 meetings scheduled with them this week to finalize our settlement agreement. They are aware that we will be appealing the decision. We will not be asking for a stay, which will not stop their project as we move forward with appealing the decision. And in essence, we've all agreed that 301 Partners will be responsible for construction of the facility, and JEA will reimburse the cost for complete development. we've entered into, or we're completing, working on settling the construction agreement for the plant, cost participation agreement for the transmission lines, which is consistent with the new policy that you just heard Rob give you the review of, as well as a settlement agreement, which will settle the PSC decision. Once the plan is completed, we've had these discussions with 301, they will surrender their certificates in our service area. So that's the basis of our settlement. We hope to finalize those agreements by no later than this week. And we're waiting for the final order to come out from the PSC, which should be in another week or so, or I think the end of this week. I think it's the end of this week. And we'll have 30 days from that date to appeal, and we'll be filing that appeal in approximately 30 days.
But the plan that they're building, is it up to the same standards that we're?
So the plan is required to be built to JEA standards.
Okay.
As part of the settlement, we'll all be participating in selecting an independent engineer to review in case there are any issues. The design, build, construct contractor, because that's the preferred method that we've all agreed to. And we have some, as progression on design development goes, we have some resolution for conflicts or if any issues come up, but they'll have to submit the design to JEA for JEA's ultimate approval, and it has to be built to JEA standards.
So just so I understand it, you'll be talking with 301 three times, in the immediate future. And then based on that conversation, the decision to appeal or not, or is there going to be an appeal regardless?
There is going to be an appeal. Our meetings will be to finalize our settlement agreements. Like I said, we have the 3 agreements. We've been working on those for a few months now. We have the documents where we think we're in pretty good shape to go ahead and finalize them. So the agreements will be finalized prayerfully by the end of the week, but the appeal is going to happen regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, if you don't mind me chiming in, Chair, is that we have the exclusive right to serve our community within Duval County.
Right.
The certificate that they got from the Public Service Commission says we don't have the exclusive right to serve. So if they continue under the ruling of the Public Service Commission, it's precedential for all of Duval County.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a very narrow issue we're going to ask the court, and it goes to the first DCA to say the Public Service Commission overstepped its bounds, its jurisdictional bounds. It has nothing to do with the 301 development project per se, but it's really the ruling on our exclusive right to serve this community.
Right.
So the new plant will serve their entire development in all the counties.
Correct.
So eventually JEA will be servicing all of those.
Perhaps. What we're not going to do is interfere with their, anything that falls outside of our franchise area, our guaranteed area. We're not interfering with their right to service those areas. It's just our.
Right, but if we're going to end up owning the plant in the end, are we?
Well, there may possibly need a need over on the Nassau side, portions of the Nassau side, and on the Duval side for JEA to increase its capacity on those sides. The Baker County side had not been part of our initial plan.
Gotcha.
But it'll service it benefits JEA as well for expansion in our service area.
But we're working well with 301. It's really this language that
Public
you
Service
just
Commission.
discussed.
Correct. It's the decision of the Public
Right.
Service Commission. And again, we believe it just has broader applications than this one development.
Yeah, makes sense.
So we want the court to weigh in. I think we initially tried to have the court weigh in before the PSC made the decision. The court just thought it was premature for us to make that argument at this time. So now the PSC's made its decision, we're gonna go back and reiterate that we don't believe that the Public Service Commission had the authority to come in this instance.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
And then, so no action required on this, and I think you'll be briefing the board tomorrow on it too?
Correct,
Great.
correct.
Okay. All right, thanks, Regina. Okay, any other issues at all? I think we're about done here. Yeah. Great, okay.
Great meeting, Joe.
Great
Meeting's
meeting,
adjourned.
Joe.
Thank you, folks.
Good job.
Appreciate it. Jay, thanks, and
Feel better.
JEA Workforce did a great job. Appreciate it.
Thanks all. Happy
Yeah.
birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Oh, boy. This was a rescheduled meeting, by the way. Didn't plan on it being my birthday.
What's the birthday plan, Joe?
No motion. Required.
We have a resolution.
Thank you all, I appreciate it. A little bit different. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you getting ready to go get cake wasted?
Let's go see our cars there.
Okay.
From Rose. Okay. From Rose, and she's in the Boston.